I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Before we move into the approval of the agenda, I see Linda is able to unmute. Nathan, can you make sure that any administrator online is also able to unmute and speak whenever necessary? We did turn the mics on.
Yeah, no, he was saying he can't hear on his
Oh. Linda, can you hear us?
I can now, yes.
My batteries are dead.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Well, with that, is there an approval for the agenda or any modifications that we want to make? All right, hearing none, we will accept the agenda. Linda, did you check your email? You should have some documents in there that we're going to go through.
I did see them, but I did not have time to look at them.
I think the intention is to have Mr. Gallagher walk us through some of the proposals.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, then with that, Mr. Gallagher, you want to, I guess we'll start there, and are you comfortable with us interrupting with questions, or how would
Absolutely.
you like us to do that?
Absolutely. If that works best for the board. Let me kind of cue this up a little bit. In the board books, I included Article 22 layoff, which is a part of the collective bargaining agreement for the Alsea Education Association. And there's 3 pages there that dictate how layoffs are supposed to occur within the union. And then the only documents we have that pertain to classified staff are 2 board policies. One is board policy GDPA entitled layoff classified staff. The other one is GDPA-AR, also entitled the same, layoff classified staff. Also for your reference, you should have in front of you this existing certified salary schedule per your request. I know it says 21-22, but that's the last time it was negotiated, and that's the same salary schedule that's being used for 22-23. What? Article 22?
No, on the screen.
Oh, no.
It's
It's upside down.
No, flip yours around because mine's not upside down.
Can you flip it around? Or stand on your head?
Is it just the second page? Oh, it is.
Oh, it
Okay.
is. Whoops.
So
Should be a way that you can.
there's. Well, when you get to that page, you have to rotate it clockwise
Okay,
or counterclockwise.
Sorry about that.
that's all right.
Yeah, I'll take you through that, and you're not gonna have to really read it much anyway. Also in front of you, you should have the HR reset proposal number 4, which the board approved. That has all the salary schedules under the 2% nomenclature for all classified, confidential, and administrative. So you should have the complete package in front of you. See a memo that I drafted. It says draft on it, and I'm going to walk you through step by step tonight in terms of what is entailed with this process. But before I get started with this, I got to tell you, this is painful for everybody. Nobody wants to deal with the reduction of force. Nobody wants to deal with cutting positions, myself included. It puts me in a very bad mood. And so pardon me if I have a few moments tonight, because this is not easy. So I brought you the first proposal January 25th of 2023. The board approved the RIF process. And so I took that memo and I've added to it. And anything you see in this memo that's underlined text is an add to. So the other text is the same as what you've seen before. But I
Can
want to,
already interrupt you just really quick.
yes, ma'am.
So What the board approved, however, was that we approved the process of you putting plans together
And this is the plan.
to present to the board for a vote. So the
This is the-
RIF,
Mhm.
like the plan has not been approved.
Correct. This
Okay,
is the
just wanted
plan.
that.
And
Okay,
that's what I'm presenting to you tonight. So I want to make sure that I hit the highlights again, because I think it's important for people to hear this multiple times. I happen to live it every day, and it's easy to forget these things. But the district is facing a significant reduction in estimated ADMW for the 23-24 school year. For 22-23, the ADMW the district is currently operating under, and keep in mind this figure is 1,166. That's this year. And that's based upon last year's enrollment. The estimated ADMW for 22-23, based upon the current enrollment this year, is going to be 620. Let's think about the impact of that. That's half. That's a huge deficit. By state law, the district's
I
required to
got a
submit.
question on that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So have we been making the adjustments on the enrollment then? Or like you can adjust for enrollment throughout the year.
Yes, we've been
And
reporting
that's
to the
all been
state.
done.
Yes, absolutely, we have. There's certain times that Luray has to submit those enrollment reports.
Okay.
And the 620 is a figure that the state has issued, not us. So once we submitted the reports, the state comes back and says, our estimate for next year, as of this date, is 620. That's the latest report we got.
We're being paid off this 1166 for this year, correct?
Correct. Correct.
But we have a lower ADMW this year than 1166,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct. They're always paid on the previous year. And they pay on the actuals.
So my understanding is the adjustment's gonna happen in May.
There's
the
gonna be,
numbers.
there's gonna be a May adjustment, yes.
Yeah.
There always is.
Mhm.
And that's where we'll,
It's where we're gonna
Go
start
down from the
feeling it.
1,000 to the, right?
Well, we're gonna have to build our budget based upon the 620, but then the
Mhm.
state looks at. And Luray, if you're on, you can certainly step in.
Mhm.
You know this much better than I do. The state takes a look at actuals for the last 2 years, and then they make adjustments based upon the actual enrollment. And there's time periods that Luray has to submit those reports. So any of these numbers that you're seeing is coming from the state. It's not us.
Okay.
Other than we submit it to the state and they process it and they get it back to us.
so when we talk about a May adjustment, and I think for this board in the past, that has been an increase in payment actually.
Mhm.
But what we would be seeing is should be a decrease
Yeah.
or a refund having to be given.
It may have to be, yes,
So there is money that may have to be paid back to the state.
yes, very likely.
And
When
do
you're
we have an
increasing it-
estimate of what that might be?
When you're
So we've
increasing
asked
in,
that every board meeting, if we're gonna have to pay money back.
Mhm.
when you're
it's-
increasing enrollment,
Mhm.
yeah, your May adjustment's gonna
Then
be,
why wasn't the answer
deposit.
ever yes?
what's that?
We were never told yes, that we're gonna have to pay money back.
I think we are. Luray, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Can you answer that question a little more definitively than I am?
Yes, we are getting our state school fund currently based upon the FY 2021's enrollments. That's the 1116 enrollments. And that's the higher of the two. The reason why next year is such a deficit is we're going down and it's based on enrollment of this current year. So we've already gone over the 2-year better of the two span. So now next year will be based on this year's enrollments. That's why you're going to see such a hit.
So Luray please answer the question in terms of our May adjustment. Are you expecting our May adjustment this year to go down?
I don't think it's going to go down that drastically. They give us the better of the 2 years. And so in May, there may be an adjustment for transportation or offset, but it's not that bad. It's not going to be a payback for student. That is not what the May adjustment is about. I bet I can figure out the May adjustment hopefully by Thursday, but it's a May surprise, which means it's an estimate because many things are factored into it from the state level. but I don't expect us to pay money back.
It sounds like she'll do some calculating. We'll have more of an estimate for you on Thursday. That answer your question?
Well, it's kind of confusing because you're saying, yes, we're gonna probably have to pay back, and she's saying no. So that makes it really confusing for
I
all
know.
of us to understand.
I would go with hers. She's the one controlling the figures. But that's the trend I've seen in the past, where when you're increasing enrollment, your May adjustment usually goes up. When you're decreasing, it usually goes down. But that's a pattern that I've experienced. She would know more definitively than I. So we'll have that figure for you.
So I'm new at this, so we're not actually getting ever real numbers. This is always just a guess. Is that how this all works?
The state always estimates our ADMW for next year.
So, but our numbers are so different. Somewhere there's got to be either payback or what? I mean, these numbers are not correct, and they never have been for the numbers of kids. Not even close.
I don't
It is-
understand what you're
Now,
saying.
now we're
What I'm
talking,
saying is these numbers for kids have never been close.
You're talking about the ADMW or the ADMR? Because
Right.
the ADMW is the weight
weighted,
per
Waited,
child, but our ADMR would be much, much lower than that.
right,
yeah.
right.
And the state goes up off the ADMW.
I guess I'm just looking for real numbers that we
Yeah.
have never gotten.
Sure. Yeah. We always have to keep in mind, there's a difference between ADMR and ADMW. ADMR is when you see the whites of their eyes. ADMW is the weightings that are added to it. You get extra weightings if you're SPED or if you're ELL or a teen parent, or there's lots of different categories. And so it's always more than what you see in terms of whites of the eyes students.
So the one thing that I can say, Ryan, that I have understood with governmental accounting is you run off projected budgets.
It's a good
And
idea.
then
Yep.
once they happen, then they go into actuals. So you're working on guesstimated numbers
But
until,
from
until
since
after the
I've
fact.
been on the board, we've been saying there's gonna be a deficit and nothing's been done about it.
No, we have been doing something about that, but
Not
Well-
enough. We knew it was gonna be in the millions, and it's like, so
Well-
now let's just cut people.
well, it's easier said than done because then you've got to look at, I mean, in my opinion, do we start from the top and work our way down, or do we start from the bottom and work our way up? I look at it like start from the top because those are your top figures and all the big numbers that really cost the school district a lot of money. Where you look at the bottom and it takes 10 people to pay one person's job up at the top. So how do you do that?
Well, first, we were supposed to have a budget in February, and I haven't seen one, so.
We budget in March and then in May.
We were
April
supposed
and
to
May.
have budget in
Supplemental.
supplemental budget in February, and we have not had one.
Yeah, you passed a supplemental budget. That was approved.
I think, but we didn't never see any of the adjustments in the numbers and things like that.
We
Yeah.
haven't.
Right, right.
Like,
So I think that's.
Right. So I guess hang with me because this document will explain how we got here, all the parameters involved and all the complexities that go with this. So the reason for the drop in ADMW is multifold, because we talked about going from 1166 to 620. Number one, the district has already cut programs last spring that were not being properly served by state and federal law. And to provide those services, those proper services to those programs would have ended up in a deficit to the district. With the cuts to those programs, it created a loss of ADMW. Also, Learn at Home enrollment for this year ended up approximately half of what was budgeted. This is consistent with other online programs throughout the state. Also, Learn at Home enrollment, as we discovered during this year, will have to be capped at approximately 217 ADMR next year to maintain non-virtual status with ODE. This was recently discovered that there was serious misrepresentation in regards to the status of Learn at Home back in 2021. The negotiated transition plan to maintain non-virtual district status is pending approval with Oregon Department of Education. Additionally, the board will see a recommendation soon for a change of Learn at Home programming to comply with the non-virtual status requirements, as the ADMR must remain less than brick and mortar ADMR. That's the key right there. The target is 217 students with a lottery list of additional students per state law that could be entered or entertained based upon the brick and mortar enrollment. So we're going to build our budget on 217. We started this year, I think, 280-ish in brick and mortar. If we start the next year at about 280-ish, that means we just have to make sure that Learn at Home enrollment is less than the brick and mortar to maintain that non-virtual status. Now, let me remind people of the impact of that. Our non-virtual status has to do with the entire district. It's not Learn at Home. It's a status that allows us to bus in students from adjoining school districts as a part of our charter. And right now, when a student and their parents opt to come to LC from Lincoln County, as an example, they can certainly do so just by calling the school and enrolling. If we were a virtual charter school, that would revert back to the residing superintendents of those districts, like the Lincoln County superintendent. Then they would have the option to say, yes, you can go to LC, or no, you can't. Most superintendents say no, because that's $10,000 that goes out the door. If we maintain non-virtual status, that's really our bread and butter for both brick and mortar and Learn at Home, to attract students, especially Learn at Home from throughout the state, without having to go through their resident superintendents that allow them the option to say yes or no. If we were a virtual charter school district, we would not have the Learn at Home numbers we have, and we would not have the brick and mortar numbers we would have. It would be devastating to the district. This is a catch that we caught this year and did not realize that we were out of compliance on that. We had a letter from ODE that said we were non-virtual, but again, in looking back at the history, there was components of the district that was misrepresented with ODE that ODE didn't know about, as they claim. And so we've negotiated a deal to stay as non-virtual and return that to back to that in next fall. And that's what's pending in front of ODE right now.
Do you know when they will make that decision?
Don't know. I just got confirmation that they're looking at it right now, I think last week.
And what's the consequence if they decide not to approve that?
We'll keep negotiating it. It's already been run up the food chain, for lack of a better term, all the way to the top. And they've all given verbal yeses and nods that, yeah, this looks good.
Okay.
So it's been already unofficially vetted. We just are waiting for the final signature that says it's official.
And did I hear you right that you said that we were going to budget for a brick and mortar of 280 and a Learn at Home of 217 for ADMR?
No, I was saying that we started this year brick and mortar about 280.
Okay.
We have not set a figure for brick and mortar yet in terms of the budget. We've only been talking about the Learn at Home dollars, and the Learn at Home team has really been taking a hard look at the existing students and population trends of the past, and really feel comfortable that 217 is what they'll be able to hit. And they're predicting that we will have a waiting list, and that's that lottery system. And that lottery system is per state law for charter schools, which is something that also popped up in the virtual, non-virtual discussion with ODE, that we have to employ a lottery system that is equal and fair. It's not just a first come, first served basis. And there's particular legislation that revolves around that. So say we did start next fall brick and mortar 280. That means we just have to make sure that Learn at Home enrollment is less than 280. Would I recommend 279? No, that's too close, because we all know that, you know, enrollments fluctuate throughout the year. 217 we feel is a safe number to build a budget on. And we can certainly add to that based upon what we see for enrollments next fall. Probably by the end of September, things will stabilize. We'll have a much better idea about what the brick and mortar will look like.
Well, we started at 280 in September, but aren't we down to 240?
Yes, we are.
That's
Both.
a lot of kids.
Also have to keep in mind that we, as a part of this transition period, we had to freeze our incoming enrollments of new non-resident students. And we've had a number of inquiries of kids that have wanted to come mid-year to LC, but we've had to say no. We had to cut that off for this year only And we'll definitely add them for
Why?
next year.
Why did we have to?
As a part of the deal that we negotiated with ODE.
I guess I wasn't aware that that was part of the deal.
Yeah, it's part of the deal.
Hmm.
So let's see. Contracts. Since March of 2022, my office, as well as the business manager's office, has been evaluating every contract the district participates in by asking 3 questions. Do we still need the service? If we still need the service, can we provide the service from within? If we can't provide the service from within, is there a better product that costs less that the district could secure? By embarking on this process, the district has significantly reduced overall costs, as evidenced by the budget report at the January board meeting. I need to change that language. It's basically, you guys have been seeing the monthly budget reports, and you've seen how our costs have been going down. So I need to fix that language. Some drastic examples of these reductions are, we just finished changing over our Learn at Home Oregon digital platform. We spent over $1 million on it during the 21-22 school year. And we went to a configuration of 3 other vendors, all that work collaboratively together and have been for years. They're tried and true in both the K through 12 realm as well as the post-secondary realm. And the total cost, $34,000. You can imagine the savings right there. Google advertising. We were doing our advertising for Learn at Home through an outside agency. The cost that was spent on that agency during 21-22 was $380,000. Basically, I went to Nathan. I said, "Can you do this?" So we tried it out, and the cost for us doing in-house total $6,000. Major savings. There was a venture capitalist project that the district was participating in when I first got here. Venture capitalist projects are not within the scope of what we should be using our public dollars for. That's something that entrepreneurial people should be doing out in the private sector. It was a $500,000 contract. I stopped it after we had spent $350,000 on it. And so we had a savings there about $150K. And there is too many other contracts to mention here that were in the range of less than $40,000, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, $20,000 there, you know, anywhere from technology to maintenance, custodial to food cost to, boy, it just goes on and on and on and on. But because there's been so many of them, they add up and it makes a big difference overall. And you'll see the impact here in just a few minutes. Another thing that we've done is we've reestablished relationships with regional services. When I arrived last March, the district was very isolated, which means basically the district was on its own. Since then, we've reestablished a lot of relationships like with LBL ESD, county officials, Corvallis Library System, public health, etc. It just goes on and on and on and on. And a lot of these organizations are now providing direct services to our district through state funding sources of their own. So that expands our breadth and brings in resources that we don't have to pay for or go to outside sources on the open market for. Also, checks and balances. When I first arrived, there was no checks and balances in terms of spending. And there was a lot of over expenditures of tens of thousands of dollars over and over again. So we've since then employed a system of checks and balances for any requested requisitions. Now there are multiple layers of approval in place before district funds are spent. And this has significantly reduced district expenditures as evidenced by monthly budget reports presented to the board by the business manager. HR reset. We started this venture last spring. It's been long and arduous. But recently the board of directors recently approved a new salary schedules with 2% steps at the last board meeting. The project rebalances compensation packages throughout the support staff while remaining competitive within the region. Prior to this approval, compensation packages have not been fairly distributed and were way out of bounds, both on the low end and the high end. There will be some savings from this reset. The district has identified placement of staff appropriately on the new salary schedules, but needs to meet with every affected employee to verify accurate placement. That really comes from incomplete personnel files. It's hard for me to know exactly where a person should be placed based upon experience when I don't have resumes, I don't have documentation. You know, it's very hit and miss. So we need to meet with the employees and say, is this about right? I mean, is step 3, you know, does that work? But so we need to meet with the employees to do that. And to complete this process, the district had to recalculate what is called balance of contracts, BOC, which is basically what we've paid them up to this point and what it's going to look like for the rest of the year. And in so doing so, we found some payroll errors stemming from over the summer that we have to make adjustments for. And that has been quite the process also that's taken quite a few weeks to complete. We've also had to redesign work calendars that the employees will be signing so they know exactly what the expectations are. These calendars will have a spot at the bottom that says, okay, you're so many days throughout the year. Here's the amount of hours per day you should be working. Here's your start time and stop time. Here's your new salary rate. It's going to be kind of a one-stop shopping document. We've also had to redesign the payment options forms. If you're hourly, we're going to give you the option of being annualized on your salary or just being paid based upon your hours for that month. Annualization, well, there's positives and negatives. The positive is that it allows you to have the same amount every month. And it doesn't reflect any fluctuation, like if you work extra hours or under hours for that month. And versus the other is just you're paid upon the hours you work that month. It still all comes out in the end in terms of what the final contract amount is. So that'll be an option for the employees. Now, because the RIF and the HR reset have just kind of come together, we're going to be meeting with people to coincide with the RIF notices. It doesn't make any sense to reset somebody and then call them in 2 days later and say, guess what? We need to get all this done all at the same time. The district is still calculating the approximate savings from the HR reset and will not know this final number until placements are verified with staff. So due to this delay that keeps happening with the HR reset and the RIF process, I know that the board approved the new payroll cycle starting February 15th to start with the HR reset. I'm recommending that we push it off till mid-March just because of the date. It's going to make a difference, but not that much of a difference, and it's the fairest way to treat our employees. Spending freeze.
Well, I have some questions, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
So when the board approved that salary schedule,
Mhm.
we opted for the conservative option of 2%.
2%.
Steps were not to be no movement.
Yes.
And then a reevaluation of the salary schedule could be no sooner. Well, we set our limit of next spring. So-
Yes.
Okay. So in that, that was not your recommendation to the board. Your recommendation was 3%,
Right.
and we were more conservative than that.
Sure.
But I do believe that what you said was this could likely save positions. If we're still in the space of calculating savings, how are we truly able to calculate what can stay and what can go? If we don't have numbers to say this is what we've saved, and this is what we need to cut, are we just guesstimating? Because that feels a little ugly.
I know. Because right now, until we meet with staff to verify their placement, like say maybe, you know, an employee comes in and they have 8 years of experience as a cook. I'm just using an example. It's pulling a position out of the air. And we put them on step 1. That's probably not appropriate. So we call them in and say, you're at step 1. And they say, well, I have 8 years of experience. You do? You know, and so then we would need to make sure that we credited that person with some experience on the salary schedule. We won't know that until we meet with them. And so until then, yes, it is a guesstimate,
But you've been meeting with them since the fall.
not with each individual employee, no.
But that's what you've reported to the board, though.
No,
Is that you've been meeting with the staff.
I've been
to-
meeting with staff that potentially might be negatively affected, but we haven't evaluated their placement in those meetings.
So we approved this in January. I
Mhm.
feel like this should be done. But I don't understand maybe what's the continued delay to meeting with staff. I do understand some of the barriers that have been highlighted payrolls and things like that,
Mhm.
but we have about 105, I think was the count that we were given of staff members.
Of FTE
Of
equivalents.
FT, well,
Lorraine,
but-
correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, it is FTE.
Yeah, it's
so
FTE.
105 FTE. Okay, so we could have more staff than that.
Right, but there's a lot of them that are certified staff that we do not need to meet with. We're just talking about the ones affected in the HR reset. And of those affected in the HR reset, there will be some that you will see today that will be recommended for reduction in force. And so it makes no sense to meet with them one day and then call them in the next and say you're being riffed. We need to do that concurrently.
I get your motive on that, but you're
Mhm.
asking the board to approve a plan without actuals. Does that make sense? Does that,
Yeah.
do you hear that concern? Because I feel like
Yeah.
there's been a plenty of time to meet with each of these people, because
Mhm.
that's your role. Your
Mhm.
role is to meet with them to get their experience, to then be able to, I would assume, help Lorraine, or maybe it's Roxy, whoever's
Mhm,
helping with that placement piece of it. So, I guess I just, we're looking at cutting people's employment, but yet the board was pushed really hard to get that salary schedule in place and make
Mhm.
those hard decisions.
Mhm.
I think we had a total of, a work session plus 2 or 3 other meetings
We
to
did.
kind of go through that.
Mhm.
But then it stalled there. And now it feels like we're being forced again to make decisions that really quick.
Okay. We could stay with the February initiation date as we had originally discussed.
I mean, I think there's more conversations to be had. I just feel like my feelings don't really belong to this table, and I get that, but this is very rushed.
So can I say something? So what I am understanding of her saying is, so we gave you the salary schedule for you to meet with all the employees, put them in their positions.
Mhm.
So then you can evaluate the payroll and the expense of it.
Mhm.
So then you can say, okay, well, we put everybody in their place. So this looks like this is our savings now. Instead of it being a blank document
Right.
that we're kind of doing it and riffing. It wasn't supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be, here's the salary
Sure.
schedule. Let's put everybody there and see what's at the end.
Sure,
It's kind of how I feel.
sure.
And I feel like maybe you haven't done that yet.
We could get you an estimate without meeting with the employees, but until we meet with them, we don't know exactly if their placements are accurate or not.
So then maybe the placements need to happen. So then we can look at the numbers, because my also understanding on the 2% was we did 2% instead of 3% or 4%. So say we don't cut this position because we did a 2% step instead of a 3% step, because that give us that money to
Mhm.
not cut that position.
Okay.
So
So Lorraine,
Yes,
Lorraine, you there?
yes.
Is there a way to calculate the placements minus any kind of RIFs, so it's independent on the 2% salary schedules to get the board the information they're wanting to see?
So just calculate the people as to where they landed on
Yeah.
the agreed upon salary schedules.
mhm.
And then
Yeah.
under that would be minus any RIF idea.
Yeah, to take the RIFs completely out.
Oh, okay.
Just get us a figure. Is there a way to do that?
From what they are currently on.
Yeah,
Yes.
But we don't, we don't want what they're currently
With
on.
this
We
new
want
salary
we want the new salary schedule. We want where they would be placed on the new
on the
salary
news,
schedule.
that's what, yeah, that's what we're meaning,
Yeah, each individual person.
right?
She said current. We're not
Yeah.
on this current salary
Right.
schedule.
We
yet.
should
know.
be-
To make it to show you the difference, I would say the current salary schedule less what they're now on equals the difference.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
right.
Because how can you know how much we really need to cut if we don't put everybody in the place where they need to be, which is the HR reset members? So how can we cut anybody when we really don't need to we don't know how much we need to cut.
Well, we actually do, but I see what you're saying. And
But we
I,
kind of don't because we're just guesstimating at the payroll expense.
Is there a better way to say that the board has no idea because we haven't seen those numbers? We don't have that
Right.
information.
so if she does what we're suggesting she does, is that gonna satisfy the board to get?
Yeah, because I want to see where we are right now.
Mhm,
And then once the employees are placed, not gonna be are placed.
mhm.
And then this is what, so we go from this payroll expense to this payroll expense. Those are the numbers that I want to see, because
Mhm.
then you can make an honest judgment
Okay.
if you need to cut or not cut.
Okay.
Or do you need to just cut this one and maybe this one,
Mhm.
not all of the bottom working our way up, because
Mm-hmm.
that just feels dirty to me.
Okay, we can get that information for you.
Okay.
All right. Spending freeze, along with the RIF, the district is on a spending freeze where only necessary items will be purchased. Also hiring freeze, we've been on hiring freeze since October. Reduction in force recommendation. Okay. So the RIF process for classified employees is defined by board policies GDPA and GDPA-AR. That's in your board books. It's also on the website under board policies. And I'll kind of hit the highlights here. The RIF process for certified staff is defined in Article 22 of the CBA for the LC Education Association. And so here's some of the highlights for both. Classified factors to consider. Quote, is determined either by the date of hire or the quality of work of staff members within a classification, unquote. The key phrase there is within a classification. The classification is like IAs or secretarial or custodial or food prep, or, those are classifications. Also within the AR, it talks about date of hire and seniority, qualifications for the remaining positions or position. Great examples like a CDL for bus driver. Also evaluations by administration. The problem with evaluations is they're not current. The ones that I find in the files are very old, if they even exist. They're not consistent and simply do not exist. So I'm going to put little emphasis on that because I don't think that would be fair to apply to anybody at this point.
What about evaluations that have taken place this year?
We have not started the evaluation process for classified this year. We're going to start it in the spring. So I have that all queued up, ready to go. We just have not done those yet. Also, since there is no CBA for classified, they do not have any bumping or return to work rights, which you usually find in a collective bargaining agreement. So we're really, for classified, it's going to really come upon the date of hire and seniority, as well as the qualifications. Those will be the main factors. For certified staff, the factors to consider are all found in Article 22 of the collective bargaining agreement. It's about 3 pages long. It's very complex. There needs to be a 15 calendar day notice, according to the CBA. It's based upon seniority as long as teachers retained have the proper licensure. In other words, you can't cut a teacher that has licensure A and then nobody else in the building has licensure A to teach those classes, whether they have least seniority or not. That's what that is saying. Also, competence, and it's defined as, quote, ability to teach a subject or grade level based upon recent teaching experience or educational attainments or both, but not based solely upon being licensed to teach a subject or grade level. So if somebody was licensed to teach in a certain subject and they've never taught that certain subject, that really wouldn't pertain, even though they have that licensure. They're looking for that experience, a recent teaching experience. Also merit, and that's defined as the measurement of one teacher's ability and effectiveness against the ability and effectiveness of another teacher, as determined by the district through its evaluation and discipline process. And we just started the evaluations last spring, and that was for probationary only. So we do not have evaluations on file yet for the permanent status staff. Those are in the works and will be completed this spring. And of course, we have had discipline processes in place since I've arrived, although I know of instances where in the past before I arrived that have not been documented. So it's going to be hard to put any emphasis on that piece as well as evaluation. The district has to identify positions to be cut. Per the CBA, the certified staff also have recall rights, and that's within 24 months, or excuse me, 27 months. And that's a whole lengthy part of the article. I'm not even going to go into it right now. Any appeals to this, it needs to be done through the grievance process, and that's found in Article 6 of the collective bargaining agreement. The first step of the grievance is with superintendent. That's not satisfied. The second step is board of directors. If that's not satisfied, then the third step is going to be a final decision by an arbitrator through the Employment Relations Board. We have to keep in mind that approximately 80% of a school district's budget is associated with staffing compensation packages, including benefits. The district still needs to continue operating, thus cannot reach to a full non-staff associated 20% to balance the budget. We just can't cut out 20% altogether. We still have to operate. We still have to pay the electric bill. We still have to provide supplies for the classroom and things of that nature. Through canceling contracts, renegotiating contracts, which we've been doing a lot of, absorbing staff positions through natural attrition, a spending freeze, a hiring freeze, and employing checks and balances system with all district expenditures, the district has saved approximately $2 million to date. That's significant. The established target for the district to balance the 23-24 budget has been set at approximately $5 million. With the $2 million savings, this reduces the target to $3 million. Now, that's both good and bad news. It's good news that it had a significant reduction. That saves jobs, programs, supplies, all those sorts of things. But we still have a $3 million target we've got to account for. And there's not enough in that 20% to make that up. We have to reach the staffing. The established timeline for the RIF is in 2 stages. I'm recommending that the first stage will occur mid-year before June 30th, 2023. And I'm also recommending that spring break as the transition timeline for first stage. Second stage will be part of the 23-24 budget development and will occur over the summer months. The budgeting process for 23-24, the entire district needs to evaluate current programming and associated staffing to minimize impact to the services provided to our students and community. That's the difficult piece. The revenue must exceed the expenditures on a district-wide basis. That's what creates a balanced budget. Cash carryover may have to be accessed to achieve this 23-24 goal. Don't know yet. We're not far enough in that build yet. The strategic planning for this process involves a 3-year strategy through 24-25. So we're trying to look not just next year, but the year after. To achieve these goals, there will be sacrifices had by all. Now we have to keep in mind when we RIF any staff member, that means somebody still has to pick up what's left over. And so it's going to be a common scenario for the existing staff to have to pick up additional duties and additional requirements. To achieve these goals, there will be sacrifices had by all. Below are some just examples. One example is lost jobs. That is so painful. That affects people not only on a personal basis, but their economic standing, and it affects those that are still within the organization also. Taking on more duties with remaining staff. There may be pay freezes and or reductions, as we've even seen in the HR reset. Also keep in mind that any certified changes must be negotiated with AEA in terms of salaries. Also note the board has approved and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it was a COLA freeze for all support and administrative staff for 23-24. What was a step freeze?
Step freeze.
Step freeze, okay, that's my error.
I don't recall.
I think you're right.
We didn't say
I think you're right.
anything
You
about
didn't
the
say
COLA
anything. Yeah,
because we were waiting
you're
for
right.
the.
My bad, my bad. Also, we may have to be looking at combining classes. It's a common thing to have in a small school to have multiple subjects in one class period. To do that, we would have to develop an MOU with the union, because currently in the CBA, it prohibits something like that. Like there's been times when I've taught in small schools where I had Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 in the same class. I had maybe 10 kids each, teaching 2 classes at once.
Well, I want to say up until 5 years ago, we had K first together, second, third together. Fourth,
Yeah, but is
fifth.
that truly the best decision? Is that really where, I mean, what's the data behind, is that the best decision versus having older students that can learn independently? Like where we're at with our test scores and things with our younger group, that's
I'd have to-
where they get those fundamentals.
Nobody's recommending that we do that at the elementary level. The class sizes are large enough that just wouldn't work. There are some instances at the secondary level, though, that we could be looking at combining classes. And that would fit a little more apropos with what we're talking about.
What is that? What does our charter agreement say though?
Charter agreement, are you talking about teacher licensure or?
No. I thought we had a student level in the charter agreement.
There is a recommended level of 23. It's not hard and fast, though. It's a recommended level. Also, we may have to be looking at eliminating duplicity of employees, like two certified teachers and subject area becomes 1. That's just an example. There might be increased class size, depending upon how this rolls out. There may be increased student supervision requirements for all. We all may have to do some additional supervision. And the last resort is loss of programming. We have to be really cautious and careful as we move through this. There are some cases where if we riff the teacher, we riff the program. I do not want to go there. But also keep in mind that you'll see some programming loss with Learn at Home based upon having to comply with that non-virtual status. And that recommendation will come to the board soon. So please keep in mind that the district is looking for savings to the general fund. And we have to keep that in mind also. If room can be made within grants through a RIF process, like you RIF certain people that are in a grant, then suddenly you can take essential positions that are under Fund 100 and put them into that grant. That really use Fund 100. And that's the fund that we're looking at. And there are some fully grant funded positions that it makes no sense to cut because that doesn't help our Fund 100. So we have to, it just depends on how the grant is, the parameters of the grant, how we can use those grant dollars. And it's quite complex. And that's something that the Ray has to watch very carefully of what we can and what we can't do. Any questions at this point before we go into maintenance of effort?
Not
Cheryl, go ahead.
Not yet.
Cheryl, are you with us tonight? Cheryl Doe?
I am.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna start explaining the maintenance of effort, Cheryl, and I'm gonna defer to you on a lot of details and questions because you know this
Yeah,
inside
That's
and out
fine.
much better than I do.
Can I ask, actually, sorry, Cheryl, can I ask a few questions before we go into that space?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so if we can go back to okay, can we go back to the HR reset again really quick. Actually, no, let me take us, let's take this back to reasons for the ADMW drop on page 2.
Mhm.
So right now you stated in the beginning of the year, we had 280 in our brick and mortar.
Mhm.
Count in February was 230. Okay, 230 brick and mortar.
Okay.
We had count in February for Learn at Home is 252. So I guess I want to know, how did we get to the 217 number? And what's happening there to get to the 217 number? What's happening in that space?
We feel that if we targeted 217 for Learn at Home. Notice our brick and mortar went from 280 down to 230.
Mhm.
It's still above Learn at Home of 217, if that was our
Right.
target. And that's the number that we worked on as a team. And we felt comfortable with setting it at that for now.
So do we get to know the criteria of how you guys came to that decision?
I'm going to defer to Tim France, Heather Shunk, and Cheryl to comment on that. You guys were the ones that had a lot more conversation on that figure than I did. Can any of you weigh in on that for me, please?
All right, hopefully you can hear me. This is Tim.
Yeah, we can
France.
hear you, Tim. Go ahead.
Okay, part of it will be is kind of in a redesign of what we are offering as a program. And so basically the current Learn at Home program will probably be making some pretty significant changes in its makeup, which that will probably be getting presented to the board at a very soon time as we're going through this budget reduction. Likely, we will be reducing staff sizes, so we will not be able to accommodate as many students.
Okay, I just was hoping that at some point we would be able to know how the decision of that number was made. So thank you for that.
When we present to the board the programming changes for Learn at Home, I think Tim and his staff are very prepared to actually show you some data.
Okay.
Is that correct, Tim?
Yes, that would be correct.
Yeah, and I think at that point, you'll be able to see a little bit more of the logic of how they got to that number.
Okay. So in the contract space, I know for myself, I don't know about anybody else on the board, but you have done work on the contracts, who we have as vendors and things like that. I think it would be helpful for the board to see what contracts we still have in place today that we are utilizing.
Mhm.
And then as well, I think I'd like to also see what in entirety, what we have cut as vendors and contracts and things like that.
Okay.
So I think that's helpful for the board to see that picture.
Yeah.
To be able to represent that. And then, okay, so on the HR reset, I just want to reiterate, when you go through this HR reset process, there are no positions that can be filled outside of what this board has approved. So there's no additional positions that are created outside of this salary schedule.
No,
No additional job descriptions that are created outside
No.
this salary schedule.
no.
So. Okay,
No, we're staying within what we see in the HR reset.
okay, so I guess I just want to make sure like we're not, there's where we maybe move something or a position that doesn't open up a new position from being created for the salary
No.
schedule. So, okay.
No,
And all new positions come through, all new positions come through the board, correct?
it has to be through the budget process, or I need to have board approval, yes.
Okay,
But that doesn't stop you from hiring the positions that already are there, but they leave.
We've been absorbing through natural attrition.
Right, but
We
it
have-
still doesn't stop you from hiring somebody back into that position outside.
Well, if somebody leaves in an essential position, then we backfill from within, is what we've been doing.
Right, but I guess my question is, do you have the authority yourself to hire outside, even though we're in a hiring freeze,
external hires.
external hires?
I'm the one that has said that we're not going to hire externally. We're going to stay from within, because if somebody vacates their position, we need to have a savings someplace.
Right,
And so we've been restricting everything to within our existing staffing. Now, there might be positions that are vacated that suddenly we don't have anybody on staff that could fill that for qualifications or whatever. And that we would be forced to go outside, but I would definitely involve you guys in that conversation first. So,
well, that's what my
So,
question was.
yeah, so we were transparent on that. And we still have to conduct business.
Yeah.
We still have to fill essential positions, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that prohibits us from going outside. It's just, we haven't been doing that. We've been trying to do everything from within.
For some reason, I seem to be missing a page. Oh, I just haven't located it yet.
So, under the, reduction in force, the second page on that,
I guess
you-
it should have been page numbers.
sorry,
shouldn't
are you going to be, for this evening, are we going to see what the operational plan looks like?
I? As best as I can show you, yes.
Okay, so I'll hold that.
We're getting to
I'll
that.
hold that question then. So, and then in that, does that also give us a dollar amount of what it saves us?
Yes.
I think that's all the questions I had for now.
Okay. All right, let's tackle maintenance of effort. It's kind of a big one. And Cheryl, back me up. If I misstate something, don't be afraid to say.
Okay, will
"Yeah."
do. Mhm.
Okay. All right, I have a chart there below. The chart below shows the history of MOE, maintenance of effort, comparing spending of maintenance of effort to sped student counts over time. Let me fix that. So you'll see that chart below. And the blue line is the number of sped students during a time period from 2019-20 to 23-24. And notice it goes up slightly and then it starts to wane. The MOE allocations, notice they were increasing slightly from 17-18 to 19-20, but all of a sudden, woo, it shot way up exponentially to 1.4 million from around the 300,000-ish figures. If you want to see the exact numbers, turn the page, and on the back part of the page there on the very top is the table that generated that chart. So you can see the actual numbers. So in 1920, we had 38 sped students. In 2021, we had 98, 21-22, 114, 22-23, 86. And we're projecting based upon the changes that we're anticipating making, excuse me, it'll be down to 50 in 23-24. That is a projection. But then if you look at the next column, says MOE allocations times 1,000. So you're talking in 17-18, we were spending $236,000 on sped services. 19-20 was 325,000. 2021, it jumped to 757,000, but we only increased by 60 sped students. Then we increased by another 16 students for 21-22, and it doubled to 1.4 million. Something's out of control there. And then in 22-23, we're down to 86. And so we're talking about 1.2 million. And then 23-24, we're hoping to decrease to 1 million, but I don't know about that. Well, let's kind of dive further into MOE and how you're able to reduce that. And one of the problems is with MOE, the feds say you always have to spend more the next year than what you currently spent on sped. So oftentimes, you know, some of the tricks of the trade is you only increase by a couple of bucks every year. And we know that the sped numbers fluctuate, but if you actually have to add more staffing because you have a serious increase in sped, what you're seeing for increases here is outlandish. That's way too much. Yeah, should there have been an increase? Of course. So the question is, how can we reduce that? Because right now we have an obligation of about 1.4 million we have to spend on sped. And if we don't, we get fined by the feds up to that 1.4 million. We don't have a choice. So federal law prohibits a district from reducing MOE except for certain exceptions. One is voluntary departure or retirement of SPED's personnel with required documentation. Like if there's a retirement, we have to have the documentation this person actually retired, and then we can actually take it off the MOE obligation. Two is a decrease in enrollment of children with disabilities. So we're going to have some decreases, and you'll see that here in just a second. And that will help to stair step down our MOE obligations, but it's going to take some time to do that. Termination of a costly disability program per student. Like say you had a very fragile needs student that required nursing and special medical equipment, things of that nature, and suddenly that student either graduated or moved to a different school district. That would be something we could reduce our MOE obligation on. Or termination of costly purchases or long-term purchases, like acquisition of equipment or construction of school facilities. Due to documented student loss for 22-23, the district will be able to reduce MOE from 1.4 to about 1.2 million for 23-24. Cheryl, am I accurate with that?
You're doing great, Sean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thus, the district will need to spend 1.2 million for 23-24, mostly through maintaining staffing levels. We still have that obligation. We have to spend that amount. Due to upcoming potential programming changes district-wide, the district predicts another decrease in SPED student enrollment during 23-24, which will further decrease the MOE obligation. Hopefully, the district will continue to stair-step the MOE obligation down annually to eventually return to $300,000-400,000 range. That's yet to be determined, but that would be much more realistic with the number of SPED students we have. But this will take some time. In the meantime, after stage 1 and stage 2 of the RIF process is complete, the district will appear heavy in SPED staffing for the 23-24 school year. So keep in mind what that means is we're going to be riffing in certain areas, but then we're not riffing in SPED because we have to meet that obligation of MOE. We have to spend those dollars. So we're going to be trying to find ways very creatively to utilize our SPED staff in a variety of usages that still falls within what is called IDEA, the special ed federal requirements of expenditures. Cheryl, you want to kind of expand a little bit more on that, if you wouldn't mind?
Sure. Well, for instance, within the district, we have something called Child Find, which is part of a process of, looking at students individually, and we have a team that does that to look towards SPED services. We can utilize some things in the area of MTSS is what it's called. It's the team that gets together, or like we've used the response to intervention teams. We can utilize that through some of the SPED funds. Being creative about how we are using IAs in the district, how we are placing them in a classroom for a student that's there, things like that, where we're being as creative as we can with staff while still using them within the special education department, serving those students that are under the grant that's required for MOE.
So I understand there are regulations about what the SPED staff can do and what they can't do. We can't just have them doing other stuff, even though we've got a lot of them.
Did you hear that question?
Right, they
Cheryl?
need to be, yes, so they need to be assigned to special education students directly. The Child Find portion can be working towards the special education department. So we may have a team of people that are working to place students, to kind of step that towards special education and try and do some intervention as part of Child Find. But for the most part, the Child Find obligation is just that we are searching for students within the classrooms that may need supports and may need looking at further to find out what is the cause for their gaps in learning or not advancing like they should be with their peers.
So I think the answer to your question is yes, we have to be very careful how we use them, and we're trying to come up with creative ways to use them to help out as much as possible.
The other thing we've been looking into and meeting with ODE about is capital expenditures. And we're going to try and submit to them some ideas that we have about things that would work towards the special ed department, would benefit the school, but it would work, with those SPED funds for capital project that might relate to the special education department. But that's kind of yet to be determined. We've just started those meetings with ODE and we're inquiring in other ways. And we've attended several meetings with ODE to just discuss how does this work? Because to ask for a significant reduction isn't real common. And so we're working on ways to do that the best we can and step that down as the years go by.
Other questions on MOE? Okay, so stage 1 details. Timeline, I'm suggesting a spring break. The savings due to balance of contract, that would be for the positions that we've identified for the remainder of this year. If we targeted spring break, could be a little approximately around 236,000. Those canceled positions would save us for 23-24 school year a total of 862,000. The total savings there would be approximately 1.1 million. And also we have built-in anticipated unemployment costs into those estimates. The focus areas. We're looking at severe cuts to general education instructional assistance. That's going to save us approximately 5.25 FTE and affects approximately 9 staff. Keep in mind, some of those general ed IAs are charged to different funds. It's not all Fund 100. That's why you're seeing a difference between it affects 9 staff, but the savings amounts to about 5.25 FTE. Secretarial pool is 1.0 FTE. Certified TOSA or certified the teachers on special assignment is about 1.8 FTE. Custodial, we're identified 1.33 FTE. We're reallocating a confidential position to non-confidential. There's miscellaneous personnel or personal services contracts we're going to be discontinuing. Also, there's a transfer of general fund staff for certified and classified to the SIA grant, about 3.25, which also alleviates Fund 100. And there's also an administrative contribution to date as of 10 days of salary. All of that adds up to 236,000 for a balance of contract and about 862,000 for next year, again, totaling 1.1 million. Stage 2 details. Timeline is summer break. This is the one we have not fully developed. We're looking at a savings about 1.3 million. That's a rough estimation at this point. We need to work with the union on the list that we have only in draft form right now. It's important to loop them in. The focus areas are more than 10 FTE for all certified staff. That includes teachers and administrators. Keep in mind, as we're dealing with stage 2, we're trying to minimize negative effects to programming. We still want to preserve the effects. We want to preserve programming as is. So if we add the 1.1 and the 1.3, it gets us about 2.6 million, and we're still 400,000 shy of the $3 million target.
It gets you about 2.4 million, actually.
Oh, gee. You know, I did that on purpose just to make sure that you could add right.
Well, you got me on my
2.4
math
million, sorry.
skills tonight.
Yeah, 1.1 plus 1.3 is 2.4. So we're 600,000 shy of the $3 million target. We need to take a closer look at this. And if there's other areas we can squeeze stuff out of before we keep going deeper, because if we went deeper on this with certified, it would affect programming, and we don't want to do that. Staff notifications, it's important to notify staff sooner than later since the hiring season is just starting for school districts throughout the state. I think that's very important. Also keep in mind, in terms of saving strategy, it's important to note any money that the district can save during the 22-23 school year can be applied to the budget target for the 23-24 school year, which reduces the target overall. Also keep in mind, what is being presented today may not be the same as tomorrow. This is a moving target. Once you start down this process, you never know how the dominoes are going to fall. And you know, if you maybe anticipated saving 110,000 on this employee, but whoops, they just bumped this other person. Now we're only going to save 50,000. You know, those sorts of scenarios happen. And the process progresses with budget development. Maybe we need to refine that $3 million target. It's maybe only as a $2.7 million target. We're estimating at this point. Also, future definitions of state funding. I know that they're looking at, admin team, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like 9.9 billion. And they've estimated 10.2 to break even. And really there's a committee at the state level that's recommending over 11 million. 10.2 is to break even. And that was developed by OASC. In fact, it was Jackie Olson that helped lead that charge. And they studied over 40 districts statewide, all shapes, sizes, whatever, and said, what do they need to be able to just stay status quo? And they came up with 10.2 billion.
Thought it was 10-3.
Is it 10-3?
I thought it
Okay,
was 10-3.
you might be right. I've had so many numbers running through my head, but yeah, so, this is gonna be a difficult transition for the district. We are still evaluating grant allocations. Luray has not gotten all the grant allocations in yet. We're still waiting for further definition of state funding levels. And that could drastically change based upon what the legislature approves. There's a big difference between, 9.9 and 10.3, or even 11.0. So I guess I'm saying that right now, the state of Oregon simply does not fund school districts at the level they really should be to maintain current staffing levels, despite I'm predicting we're going to see a lot of cuts statewide if they go with the 9.9. I would encourage people to contact your legislature. Simple sentence: please fund schools adequately. That's all I got to say. It's nothing difficult, because it does get through to them, and they usually have an office aide that's keeping tally, of what people weigh in on. And I would encourage you to write letters, send emails, make phone calls. That's what our representatives are for. Let them know that we don't want to see any more cuts to our schools. We want to be able to fund our schools appropriately and staff them and with proper programming and proper staffing. Also, keep in mind, we have to create a balanced budget by June 30th. That is state law. And so that's why we're starting this process now. And we have to move through this and the best of our ability and get that budget balanced.
Anybody?
Yes, I have finished my presentation.
For
Thank you.
Deb.
So as I look through this, and you say you want to reserve programs.
Mhm.
So then I look at, okay, so we need to reserve our programs, but yet we're cutting the people that are working with our kids instead of the people. Our school at one time was superintendent was the principal,
Mhm.
AD was the vice principal.
Mhm.
So that's two people versus
Mhm.
right now we have 4 or 5
Superintendent,
high school.
5.
So why not cut those 3 positions?
Mhm.
So then we can staff. I'm just gonna take at the top of this page. It's not,
Mhm.
not meant for anybody in particular. The secretary at $16 or $18 an hour.
Mhm.
So cutting the superintendent at 90,000 versus cutting somebody at $17 an hour, that's
Mhm.
kind of a big difference.
Mhm.
So
There is.
I would rather see
Mhm.
the superintendent be the principal and the AD be the vice principal
Mhm.
and save the secretary because she's working or he is
Mhm.
working directly with those kids.
Mhm.
So
And-
I have a hard time paying these big positions when these positions are working with our kids
Mhm.
and reserving those programs.
There's going to be some severe cuts to admin for next year. We're working on that plan right now, that strategy. And I think you're thinking the right direction there.
I just am not comfortable with doing these little people first versus the big people.
Mhm.
I'm more comfortable with
Mhm.
cutting the big people first
Mhm.
to reserve the programs for our little people.
Mhm. So Lorraine, just so we can put things into perspective, if we were to cut an administrative position, what would that save the district versus cutting say a teaching position, as we talked about today?
If you're talking full year,
Yeah,
um, I would guess it's a teacher is probably for benefits and is about 96 to 100,000, and an admin would be a good 40,000 more than that, probably.
so 140 for an admin, 96 to 100 for a teacher.
Yeah, because of
These
Yeah.
Benefits.
benefits
Because
and
of all the
everything.
benefits that
All
roll
the
into it,
benefits,
not just the
right.
salary.
Wages and benefits that are increased.
Right, right.
The perks that go with the jobs. And I get that they have gone to school but I just don't see our school needing 5 admin.
Well, I completely agree. We've talked about that all year long.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I personally want to see this ball flip the other way.
Mhm.
And if we're gonna cut somebody in the next 2 weeks, I'd rather see the ball flip the other way.
Mhm.
Because the people in the building working with the kids every day are reserving the programs. The people that are
Mhm.
overseeing all of those people are not reserving the programs. The people doing the programs are reserving the programs.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And it saves a lot more money flipping the ball the other direction.
Mhm.
So that's my 2 cents.
And notice that admin will be a part of that stage 2.
Stage 2, I'd rather see that as stage 1
So-
personally.
Okay.
Hey, Lorraine, can you answer a question for me? Can you tell me what we budgeted last year for brick and mortar students and what we budgeted for learn at home students? Do you have those numbers?
Not just the enrollment count.
Yeah, enrollment count, not the ADMW.
Let me look into that and I'll get back with you.
So
Okay.
I'm gonna apologize because I think these are really hard conversations to have, and I don't think there's any easy way to have this. So my intent is not to offend or hurt anybody in these questions that I ask, but I'm going to ask them.
Oh.
The reason, go ahead, Lori, do you have it?
No, I was just gonna say, I'll look for that number and get back with you.
Thank you. I really have to, I just have to say, I have to call out this, it's really hard for me to see that, 3 areas of why we're seeing ADMW drop are directly associated with online. But yet, when I look at the plan of stage 1, I'm not looking at stage 2. If I look at plan of stage 1, we're cutting brick and mortar staff. Brick and mortar is not down.
Well, we
Learn at
are.
home Oregon is down. Well, that's why I'm asking for the budget numbers,
Actually,
because we budgeted almost, I believe, twice that in Learn at Home Oregon.
Mhm, we did.
stage 1, half the aides are learn at home. The general education IAs. Secretarial pool of 1.0 is learn at home. Big portion of the certified TOSA is learn at home.
And so, okay,
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying some of that.
Mhm.
When you look at things like custodial and, when you look at this plan in general, how is it operationalized? I mean, what's the support that the teachers are getting? Let's say they have to clean up their classrooms because we don't have that custodial work, or they've made their lesson plans based on the aides in their classrooms, or whatever that looks like. What is the support they are getting to continue to maintain a rigorous environment for the students?
Custodial, we feel we can cut that back and there should not be much of a difference in services to the classrooms. Keenan, I know you're here. and Can you maybe address that a little bit? Because we've been talking about that. What are your thoughts in terms of custodial?
And then what about, I mean, there's more than just, I appreciate that. Thank you. But I think have the staff been included in these conversations to say, how are we setting you up for success rather than making it a failure? Because if
Well-
we cut this, we also look at the
Yeah.
chaos that's going to ensue in these classrooms.
Yeah.
We already know that we have disciplinary issues
Yeah.
in the education system as a
Yeah.
whole.
I'll be addressing the K through 12 district staff tomorrow with this, I'll be presenting this to them. And that's when we'll start the conversations. And yes, we have to have those conversations. Okay, how is it going to look different in your classroom when you don't have your 1.0 aide sitting there at all times? It's going to change how instruction is happening in the classroom. I'm not predicting we're going to have teachers having to clean their own classrooms. The secretarial pool position, we feel we can, because of the loss of enrollment with Learn at Home, we feel we can absorb that, and that's not going to have a negative impact to the classroom. But
So,
it's the IAs that will have the most impact.
so the I'm sorry.
I was just gonna, but this, so the staff have not, they have not been a part of any of this planning then. So,
It's been administrative.
so, but the teachers, the ones that this, I'm not saying that it doesn't impact administrative, but it impacts. As we get closer to the student, this is who it's truly going to
Mhm,
impact
mhm.
more. Have they had any insight or any, have they been talked to at all about this?
Like I said, we're going to address it first thing district-wide tomorrow.
So no, we haven't talked to them. They haven't gotten to weigh in on this.
Not to this
and-
level, no.
And really, the plan that has been built without their feedback.
It's been totally in the personnel realm that we've had to look at. And, we've had to look at some very sensitive information that is not available to everybody and shouldn't be shown to everybody.
Mhm.
And that's the normal part of the process. Now comes the discussions, and that's going to start tomorrow.
So do the discussions modify this plan?
I'm going to be very interested to see what people's perspectives are on these. And then, but at the same time, if we don't cut certain areas, okay, what do we cut next?
Mhm.
I think we need to explore admin as a part of stage one. I think that's a good suggestion. And if there's others that come up that we need to be looking at, we certainly can.
So to Deb's point, I want to just, before I forget, I think this is a me, and I would love to hear what the board says, but with these admins and the head counts that we have, we need those licensure here in this building doing the work. I think that if you are an administrative employee and your license is recognized in that, then I think all admin need to be in the building. I think we have to do away with online admin. I mean, we need their bodies here as a collective group of this team.
Mhm.
I think to Deb's point, like, we're heavy, but then you really need to be able to collaborate together. And I mean, I'm even in other business worlds, when you get into leadership positions,
Mhm.
you're on site together. So,
I understand that, but we also have to understand the Learn at Home world is totally online.
But
And when we meet administratively, we meet mainly in Google Meets.
But if we are cutting positions and things like that, and we need to have somebody that license there's basketball games, there's sicknesses, there's meetings
Mhm,
in
mhm.
Salem. If we're gonna pay for that person to be having an admin license, they can do that in this building and serve Learn at Home just as well as they can be away from Learn at Home and call in here. But you can actually use their licensure in this building in
Mhm.
multiple different ways.
I
Correct.
like that idea.
Sorry, I just
So
need to
you're
get.
thinking of the future. That's the direction we're
Well, I'm
heading.
gonna actually say, if you wanna, I'm gonna say, put it into the admin conversation, maybe that's the
Mhm.
relocation now in this year.
Mhm.
Get relocated into, here,
Mhm.
start doing that and being able to really serve in that capacity.
We have an administrator coming this Thursday from Learn at Home to help cover the building. We work together as a team.
Yeah, I mean, I would think it needs to be more than just once every, so I mean, I think it means,
I
I think it means
understand.
in district.
What we haven't revealed yet is the plan for what an admin
I'm
is
sorry,
truly
my
going to look
fault,
like
mhm.
for next year. But the direction that you're heading
Mhm.
is the right direction. That's not what we currently have.
And so,
There's going to be a significant decrease in admin, and there's going to be more of a presence of the admin associated with Learn at Home in building.
but I think more of a presence still leaves it up to just I mean, like, I get that we have meetings that take us off, but I think it's not more of a presence, it's in district.
Okay,
I mean, that's just my, I mean, we
I'm
have.
not sure how that pertains to saving money.
Well,
Well,
because you're-
if you're restructuring the admin, then you need to restructure it in a way that is pertinent so that they're here and you know who's here.
Yeah, and they will be. We're heading in that direction.
so they can work their Learn at Home here on site.
Yes, they could.
And be,
A physical
so,
presence.
well, be the principal and the
yeah.
Learn at Home.
That's the direction we're heading.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
I just think that needs to be stage one, not stage two. I think the admin is the top heavy piece of it all, because I think once you start shedding those pounds, then you have more room for the ones that are working with our children.
I understand. We have to be sensitive though to family situations and family
I agree.
obligations. To pull that mid-year is pretty difficult.
Well, it is for the little people too.
I understand.
So you have to be just as sensitive to the little guys
Mhm,
as you do the upper people.
mhm.
So
Okay,
have a-
other,
I
Yeah.
do have a question
sir.
about the focus areas in stage one,
uh-huh,
and it just, I'm having trouble visualizing again, the operation of the school with these things, you know, when I look at how the school operates in these people, like how are you gonna do it with these people completely gone, and someone's considered like what's left and who, and how much manpower there is left to do all this stuff.
mhm.
And I think that probably staff input probably needs to go into that
Yeah,
also.
I would agree. So if, I think the biggest impact to the teachers is going to be the loss of, significant loss of general education assistants. Yeah, we do need to have those conversations. How is that going to work? And I currently have our brick and mortar staff looking at scheduling, looking at ways to make sure that student supervision is going to be upheld, and all those sorts of things. So we're
Again,
still
I'm just having trouble visualizing how it's actually gonna work once those are gone and
Right.
these numbers.
right, and the answers we're still developing that, and we do want to get staff input on that. But if we don't cut general ed IAs, I guess that's the reason. I mean, if we don't cut these things, where else do we cut? And yes, I agree with you on the admin piece, but where else do we look at those cuts?
well, I think we start from the top and work our way down, because that's where most of our money is going.
I think you have to be careful with that, because when you start having those conversations, in my opinion, your teachers are the next ones that you cut. You have to actually have
Well,
teachers
that's
to
what I
run the
mean,
school.
But you
Right.
gotta look starting from the top and working your way down, not just start from the bottom, working your way up. I mean,
No.
it has to be all of
I
it.
think it's across the board in general.
I totally agree with that. Because what I want to look at is preserving the programs for our kids. I mean, because that's what we're here for, is
Mhm.
to teach them.
This proposal does not touch programming except for Learn at Home, and that is a necessity because of the new targeted enrollment that we're looking at. So there's going to be a reduction of services for Learn at Home, because we have to maintain a population less than what brick and mortar is. And that's what the Learn at Home team is working on right now. And that's the proposal you'll be seeing very shortly. That's the only area that we're going to be losing programming.
So have you and the admin team discussed contract days?
Yes, that's another part of this, is we're going to be looking at contract days. And there's probably going to be some reductions in contract days across the board.
And then how does that fit in with the educational plan? Like for the building, like, do we need to have secretaries on 260, or do we move everybody down to
Correct.
220? Do our,
Correct. We're going to
do
be,
our aides need
yeah,
to be
Yep.
at anything
Yep.
more than our teachers' contracts are at? Like, what does that
Yep.
look like? Because,
well, teachers' contracts are
well,
set.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the days.
Yeah. But yes, there is some lot of considerations we looked at in support staff in terms of contractual days. And anywhere from secretarial to custodial to IAs to all those sorts of things. And yes, we are looking at that. You're not going to save a whole ton of money though, but yes, we are looking at that.
I think if a little bit saves a position, then we should be looking
Mhm.
at every single option.
The 0.33 is an example, then the custodial, that's a reduction of contract days.
Okay. And then you mentioned in the contract piece of things that we've done a lot, but what we still have yet to do is reevaluate the contract with our preschool to start charging them for the mortgage and
Mhm.
the position that we
Yeah.
have hired over there, because we employ one staff member from us in their preschool.
Well, Lorraine, can you comment on that? Because we were talking about that today and she doesn't see that we are paying for a position over there. Is that correct?
Correct. For 22, 23, I have no one allocated there. So if there is an EA that I don't know about working over there, then I need to know about that. But currently, no one is coded to a preschool line item.
So, but I do have Bart looking into the preschool situation, and you're right, we do not,
That's what you need to look into.
okay. I'll look into it. And we do pay for, Lorraine, correct me if I'm wrong, we pay utilities
Yeah, we pay to have the building heated.
and we
fuel,
own
you
the
know, and-
building. We're not receiving any rent on the building, right?
Correct. We are receiving internet, if I'm pretty sure. Internet reimbursement.
Okay. And you said the building is now paid off, is that correct?
Yeah, I think this year was our last payment. And so in 23, 24, we won't have that as a building payment, which is nice. Yeah,
So the district will have fully owned the building then
yes.
by 23, 24.
So we still have mortgage payments though, right now.
Lorraine,
Well, actually, we pay it early on, so I think it's going to be off of our books for next year for any long-term leases. It's off of our books.
So we don't owe on that building?
I don't think so. I'll have to verify, but we have one last payment, but I think when last I looked, we are done with that building's payments. I'm pretty sure. I have to verify. I can answer another question for you if you have that,
Yeah.
if you want that information. ADM.
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. So with the ADM, like I said before, we would have based our budget off of the 21, 22's ADM state school funding, which is the higher of what we would have anticipated for 23, 22, 23. So with that being said, we based our ADMR is roughly, it's based on a 921, which actually 179 of that count is not brick and mortar and not Learn at Home. It was all other programs that have been removed. And then Learn at Home on that basis was a 481, and this is as of October 1st, that count of October 1st. And brick and mortar was at 257. So that kind of totals it up to the 9.
Okay.
And then you have some weights, but that's kind of the breakdown.
And so right now, Lorraine, our number is 230 and 282,
252.
252.
Well, sorry, I'm using February's numbers. You probably have more accurate numbers, Larry.
So what do we have right now, please? Do you know?
Oh, for enrollments?
Yes.
Currently going to be presented to the board as of 3/1 is our enrollment brick and mortar is 229. Learn at Home is 241 enrollments.
So 470, which is just under what we thought.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, can you answer a question for me in regards to the calculations you guys are looking at for your next year's enrollment?
Yep.
So I think one of the things I'm curious about in the Learn at Home space is, are you guys as a team looking at what's happening with the economy and parents having to go back to work and not necessarily being able to keep kids in an online format? Is that something that's weighing into that discussion for your guys' group?
That is definitely would be part of the thing, is that as a trend, there's quite a few the overall state enrollment in online programs is going down. And as a result, there are online programs that are closing. So it's kind of double. There won't be as many online programs across the state likely next year. So there will be students who will be looking for homes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So you kind of said something that I want to just clarify. When you were looking at these focus areas, to me, they don't quite look all online. And you were saying they were mostly online, so the general ed instruction 5.25 FTEs, those are in school, brick and mortar, correct?
That's split between brick and mortar and learn at home.
And then the secretarial was
Learn at home,
learn at home, and then certified TOSA learn at home.
not all of it, but some of it, yes.
So it's only 1.8 FTE.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the custodial is here.
That's here, brick and mortar.
Just trying to, okay. Didn't quite get all my notes there.
I might be overstepping, but just for clarification, I think when you're asking about the percentage of cuts that are happening between the two programs, it might be fair to also bring up that at this point, most of the first 2 million that has been saved this year has basically mainly came from Learn at Home. So I don't know if you want to say that's stage 0.
So the first 2 million was learn at home?
Most of it, yes.
And that's detailed on under the contracts.
Oh, right.
The advertising, the platform. The venture capitalist thing, that was a district-wide thing.
Yeah, this one over here. Okay.
I just have to address the timeline, I guess, also. I think March, I think spring break is callous. I think it's cruel. It's less than 2 weeks away and there's a whole week that they're not paid for in that space of it too. So
We can change that.
I think that you by spring break need to have everybody on the new salary schedule. I think
Okay.
that needs to be the evaluation that you do, that you actually start looking at
Mhm.
where people are in this.
Okay,
And then I think if you want to talk through what this looks like, I want to hear from the staff how this impacts them.
hmm
I want to open the door to the staff to be able to have open conversations with us without fear of retaliation or, crossing the boundary lines. Like we sit behind here and we get to make a vote, but they are the ones doing the work. And I don't just mean the teachers. I mean everybody, which is why this is a work session. So Tim, you're really not overstepping because that's why you're invited to the work session so that we can hear those types of things. But I think we make a decision that we don't understand sometimes how that impacts the entire school district running. And in all fairness, I appreciate the work that you do, Mr. Gallagher, but you're not in the classrooms with teachers also kind of balancing that side of it too. And so I just want to, this is the first time I've ever had to go through this. It's been, I
Mhm.
think it's happened before in our history, but
Mhm.
these are really big cuts. I'm not saying they're not necessary, but we got to make sure that these staff can still do their job.
Yeah, and-
Well, oh,
sorry.
sorry, I just wanted to say, I don't think it's opening the door for complaints for the staff. I think it's opening the door for feedback.
Mhm.
And I was reading the policy and as a board member, we have the right to hear feedback, but not complaints.
Mhm.
And so I think I would like to hear feedback also from teachers and staff, what their ideas are, because they live it every day too.
Mhm.
And it stinks for everybody, and it especially stinks for them because it affects their household too.
Yeah, and I understand you're gonna present this to the staff tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
but I would like to see some time for actual like staff input and discussion and maybe
Mhm.
hear some of it. And that would
We can
help
do
me
that.
visual, because again, help me visualize this, maybe the staff feedback could help
Sure,
with understanding what this is really gonna look like. And
sure. Yeah, we can do that.
maybe we need time to actually schedule time for the staff to actually discuss it.
If the board is okay with it, I'd like for our admin team to first meet with staff and have those discussions. Now, if you want to join in hearing that, it's up to you guys. Or do you want to have a formal listening session where staff present to you their feedback? But I would like our admin team to first initiate that, because we're the ones that have had to put this together. And like I said, if we have more feedback that might change what we're recommending here.
Mhm. Well, I think, as Rustine stated, I think we need to put our employees in the HR reset numbers first. That needs to be the first thing, is put them all in place and see where we are then.
Okay,
I thought we had already done that. I thought we were going to do that last month.
it's taken some time. I mean, the balance of contract exercise took about 2 weeks.
Yeah,
You know, it's taken some time.
well, I think we need to do that first,
Mhm.
because then we can see really where we are. Because guesstimations don't feel good when you're cutting somebody.
Yeah, I understand.
So I don't really want to do that.
Okay,
Well, I think we learned our lesson. We did a lot of guesstimations with the salary schedule. I think we want more firm, concrete information. I would also, when you bring a proposal to the board for what this looks like, I'd like to see it align with like the educational plan and operational plan of the building.
mhm,
So that, we're still meeting, standards, compliance standards with the government.
mhm,
We know how this is gonna, we know how this is fitting into supporting, our reading goals for the 3rd grade. And, so that educational plan that you have for the district,
mhm.
how do these cuts fit into that to still make sure that that educational plan is still
Mhm.
supported? And I think from there, I think stage 2 probably needs to have that built in a little bit too, because that's an even
Mhm.
bigger, and we're focused on stage 1, I think right now, because it's the short term and it's directly in front of us. But I think stage 2 is even more drastic and
Mhm.
possibly detrimental. So we need to look at that too.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Keep in mind with the Lining for Student Success project, you're going to see the recommendation for the first stage of this Thursday's board meeting. And that's probably as close as we can get to a school improvement plan at this point. That is still coming in the Lining for Student Success process. We don't have one that has all the educational goals captured right now. Those are in development. The SIP plans that have been submitted on behalf of the district in the past have just been an exercise in paperwork. There's really not been any staff input or buy-in. It's not been implemented correctly. So we're trying to do this the correct way. And that's why the plan for the Lining for Student Success you'll see on Thursday does have staff input. We've done a lot of surveys. We've gathered input. We've had listening sessions, talking sessions, and those are still going to continue. It's not just a one and done type deal. So that's probably the best document that we'll be able to use at this point, is all I'm trying to say, to make that comparison.
Mhm. Sorry, I had one more question that just popped up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yeah, have
Bart?
you been talking the whole time?
No, nope, I've been very quiet.
Go
Um,
ahead.
I keep hearing about the HR reset, right? That Deb, you want that to happen first. And I don't disagree with you. We need to understand something though, that the 2% HR reset was to balance all employees, right?
Yeah.
And we heard that many got cuts, but we didn't realize in that many got raises. Okay, so do take that into consideration.
Well, can I say, Bart, on top of that, that's why I really think it's important before we do anything else, that we place all of the employees in that salary schedule where they need to be, so we can really get the real picture instead of the guesstimation.
I agree with you. I just wanted to make sure everybody had a picture that it wasn't just people getting cuts. There's also people getting raises or
Right,
brought up
and
to where they should have been. Let's
Right,
say.
and that's why I guess I said that I
Yeah.
felt that everybody needed to be putting that salary schedule first.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think also, I think it would be helpful. I mean, this is hard enough in its own, but it's really hard to not understand sometimes why somebody maybe I've worked with for 4 years, but I'm a month younger, got ripped and I didn't, or things like that. So I think it'd be really helpful if we could have like the objective criteria for the position being cut. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the objectivity comes in terms of hire dates and qualifications for classified. For certified, it's those areas that we've outlined that has to do with licensure and how the CBA is written. That's the objectivity of the whole thing.
And so I kind of, to Bart's point, then with the HR reset, then we have to have them in that space. Because right now everybody's all over the board.
In terms of their current salary schedules, because we haven't put them on the HR reset salaries yet.
But
So-
but have we given them all new job titles and they've signed like a,
That's what we
I don't know
need.
if it's a contract. I don't
That's
know
what
if
we
the
need to
right
do.
word, But
No, we have not done that. We're ready to do that. But we were going to do that concurrently with the RIF. But it sounds like the board wants us to do it separately.
I think so.
I think, I mean,
So we have to begin with.
yeah, I think I think to be really frank, we did not approve a RIF plan. We just approved the process of making the plan.
And that's what
Um,
you have in front of you.
But sadly, I think that a lot of this information has gotten out and it's caused a lot of trauma to just come up. So I definitely, I want to ask the questions as a board so that we know what we're approving, because I think, I'm just gonna say, it, I think the community doesn't trust us to know what doesn't trust us to ask the hard questions. So we need to do that.
Okay.
Christine, I'd like
Yeah.
to call to your attention that Lorraine has had her hand up for a really long time. She may have an answer back to you on some of the things you've asked.
I'm sorry, Larry, I thought you already gave them to me, but yes, thank you,
Oh.
Linda, so much.
This one was just that we have the one last payment on that preschool house this year. It's one last payment in September and then we're done.
Thank you, Larry.
So let me understand, we are not charging the preschool for any of their utilities, or we are?
Lorraine? may
I
ask you to-
understand. I don't think we are. I can confirm, but I think we're just internet currently.
So maybe we need to relook at that contract, because we can't just be giving that building away.
Yeah.
I mean, because we've got to pay for the insurance, we've got to
Mhm.
pay for the utilities. Are we paying for any staffing over there?
And from what I understand, Preschool Problems has even offered to pay rent and utilities in the past.
And I think that maybe needs to happen.
Actually, I talked to the director a couple months ago and they were not willing to pay for anything, but I think we need to relook at the contract.
I think so, because I mean, if we're struggling, then we're kind of getting a free
Mhm,
ride
mhm.
on.
Yeah, we can look at what I can do is I can bring the contract to the board for review and we could take a look at it. And I can get your direction and I can approach them and go from there.
And then also the last time we met and was talking about contracts, you were gonna bring up the bus contracts that we have with the other districts.
Yeah, we're
And-
still evaluating that to see where we're gonna land with those. To see if we're breaking even, if we're making money, if we're losing money with Kings Valley as well as WLA.
Yeah, so,
That's still a part of the analysis that we have to do.
yeah, so we need to look at that too, because if
Yes.
that's costing us money, then we need to do something about that too.
Correct.
So I guess those are the two areas, another two areas that we keep putting more on your plate, but more.
No, I
we need to
think we
look
need to
at.
look, yeah, we need to clean all this up.
One thing when I look at these areas where you've identified potential cuts, I kind of would like to see specific plans for where that work will be then internalized. Like say you lose one FTE, who's gonna do all that work? I'd like to
Correct.
know exactly who's gonna do that work.
Like which FTE are you
Any
referring
of
to?
them, just any of them. I know that work's gotta still be done, and I'm just curious for each one. I personally just would like to know exactly what's gonna happen with that work.
Sure,
And there has to be a plan for it.
yes, there is. And
I would like
I've
to see that.
I've only started to meet with those individuals. And there's gonna, like I've been telling people, there's gonna be a lot of, you're just gonna have to take on more duties as we have to cut positions. And so, yes, we are disseminating those duties and making sure those areas are being covered.
Yeah, I would kind of like to know.
I
On it,
understand,
Even though I'm not the person taking on those duties.
sure, I
Curious to-
understand, like secretarial pool, there'll be some secretarial duties that need to shift to our existing secretarial.
So you'll
of
take
staff.
so you'll take the online position
Mhm.
and then maybe the one that's in-house will be able to take over those duties. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, partly, there's also some other solutions we're looking at of other existing staff to backfill. Just depends on the position and what we're doing, but we're trying to work out those details and starting to meet with staff and have those conversations.
Okay.
So, I guess from the board members, what would do you want to see next steps as? I think what I've heard loud and clear is that staff need to be put into their HR reset
You can do that.
positions and salary schedule.
And then reevaluate the data of where we are. I
Mhm.
mean, and what we're saving or if we're
Flex.
losing more money. Because like Bart said, some are getting raises, some are losing money. So
Mhm.
I think we need to put those people in that position, then reevaluate the data.
You can do that.
Yeah, I mean, it means you're gonna have to have two uncomfortable conversations with
Yeah.
some people, but on the other hand, if it saves one person's job, that's
We can do
that's
that.
awesome.
We can do that.
What'd you say, Ryan?
No,
Oh, I thought you said something. Linda, anything from you on next steps? Oh, you got.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Is this all going to be information that we'll have by Thursday? Or when will we have this information?
In terms of meeting with all the staff we need to meet with, it's impossible physically to do that between now and Thursday. So
Okay,
how about if we table this? I meet with staff on the HR reset. And then once we have completed that, then we can proceed with this. In the meantime, I want to meet with, address all K through 12 staff tomorrow after school. And then start holding some admin and staff listening sessions.
Can you invite board members? to
Of
those?
course. Yeah, I'll CC you guys on that.
We'll just make sure we don't have three of us in one session type of a thing.
You guys can come. You're welcome anytime.
So just for clarification, you'll notify, you're gonna talk to staff tomorrow, do you give
Yep.
them the heads up?
Yep.
Then you're going to start meeting with them, but a new plan will come forward to the board to approve, because a plan has not been approved yet by the
No,
board.
it's not. And so based upon those listening sessions, based upon the HR reset numbers, that will probably tweak some of this.
Okay.
So let's call this version 1. There'll probably be a version 2. Much like we did with the HR reset process.
I guess the only thing I would say also is we have a board meeting on Thursday.
Mhm.
We can't have a conversation with you back and forth, but we can hear you. So if the public would like to speak, I think that is a great time for the board to hear from the community members and staff.
That was a clarifying question. Did I hear right, we're 241 with Burnt Home and 139 with Brooklyn?
229, 229
So
brick
we're
and
having
mortar,
on Burnt Home?
and we are 241
Is
with
that
Lebanon.
coming out of compliance with the deal you're working with?
Yes, until next year. So we have a new,
The ODE is going to allow us to be heavy on learn at home over brick and mortar during this year as we're changing everything around.
But we can't bring any more brick and mortar stores. Or-
not until July 1 when
Right.
we restart our next
Right.
year.
That's part of the deal with ODE on that.
We can't bring in either one.
No,
Okay, I
yeah,
just, didn't-
we,
yeah,
it would cause a lot of problems.
The
So
other question I had is, what other special programs do we have other than CTE and brick and mortar?
can you take that as a takeaway for us to, like in the brick and mortar space, the special programs that we, like when we
well,
look at
special
digging.
programs can be like 504, TAG, ELL, RTI. Or is that what you're asking, Keenan?
Yeah, you said there's only, you don't want to get any rid of any specific programs.
Right.
Other than CTE, what else?
Oh, it's kind of like Mr. Rounds and here's his question. There is a plan, if we cut like a TOSA that has a special program, there's gonna have to be somebody else that picks that up. And so we've got that plan going in terms of who's doing what. Does that answer your question, Ken? What?
Why don't you guys meet?
Yeah, why don't you see me in the morning?
Yeah,
We
why
can-
don't
we
you
can
guys
talk.
chat?
Yeah.
And I think it would be good where you talk about digging in deeper that
Yeah.
might affect programs. I think that's
Mhm.
probably good for the board to know that information.
Mhm.
Also,
Yeah, we can talk.
to the admin online. So Tim, Bart, Cheryl, Heather. Did I miss anybody? Anything else you want to add or just have us keep in mind when it comes to these plans?
I don't believe I have anything to add.
Thank you.
I would like to say that our admin team has been working almost nonstop on trying to figure out how to pave a path forward that is in support of children that we're all here for. And so I'm very proud to be on this team of individuals who are, I mean, we talk all weekend long and all week long about this and how to support. And I want to add, you mentioned earlier about why families might be choosing to go back to brick and mortar, but there's a significant number of families that are choosing to be more involved and engaged in their child's education because they're not seeing what they want to see as far as progress in person. In addition to that, there are families that choose online due to their schedules, due to medical needs. And, we want to make sure that there is a space. It doesn't matter if, a child goes in person or online, that program needs to work for the child. And so that's what everyone in Learn at Home, their heart is for the children. They are connected, and that is why those children are there. So yes, we made program changes this year, but what we didn't change were the individuals who connect with those children every single day. And I'm very, very proud of the heart that is involved in Learn at Home. And so I want to say that, and I want to say that I know that all of you have incredibly hard decisions to make. It's awful, but we're all here working nonstop to try to make sure that each child has what they need and the experience they deserve.
Thank you, Heather. And I want to reiterate that for brick and mortar too.
Yeah.
There's not a single one that I've met or worked with that I wouldn't take any place with me. You all make a big difference for these kids, every single one of you. And I really, really mean that from the heart. And this is the hardest thing I've had to do in my 30 years as a public educator. It truly is. I got in this business to build programs, not to tear them down. And so there's times that you won't see this of me, but I go home and I get emotional. I really get emotional. It's not easy. And I know it's not easy for you either. And I have the ultimate respect for you guys, each and every one of you. And there's times that we may disagree on certain things. That's okay. There's no problem with disagreeing. And it's okay to express those disagreements. It's okay. And Christine, I do want to address, you mentioned a key word that kind of reverberated with me earlier, and that's retaliation. I will not tolerate any kind of retaliation on anybody at any time. And if there is retaliation of any sort, I want to hear about it immediately. And I promise you, I will deal with it. I know that hasn't been the modus operandi before I got here. I am sorry that people had to go through what they went through. But I can assure you that I will not tolerate that. And that's very strictly addressed in board policy. The other thing is I have been looping Krista, the new superintendent, in a lot of this stuff and keeping her up to date. And I'm really excited about her coming and starting July 1st. And I can assure you that she's not going to tolerate retaliation either. And so please, it's okay to have tough discussions. It's okay to disagree, but we do it respectfully, we do it kindly, and we do it meaningfully. And it's important for me to hear feedback. You know, the board has been talking about feedback. And it's
Yeah,
important
man.
for us to hear that. And because there's things that we might be not looking at or not seeing. That's why, like Heather said, we've been working nonstop on this stuff. We really, really have. And I'll tell you, the admin team has been working on weekends too. Even yesterday, it was a Sunday. They were working on this and debating and looking at all the data. And so we take this very, very seriously. And I appreciate Heather's comments, but I also want to make sure that you guys understand, we have the same respect for brick and mortar. It's amazing what you do with these kids, each and every one of you. It's amazing how you care about them. That's why I fell in love with this place, folks. It only took me 30 minutes. I've told you that many, 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 many times. My heart is with LC. I want to see LC succeed. But I got to tell you, if we continue down this road of spending, we will be closing the doors within a year. And that's not okay, folks. That's not okay.
I'm just wondering if I could ask one clarifying question. Christine, is that okay?
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. This question has to do with my wife, who recently was ripped. Earlier, it was said that there was one FTE secretarial position being ripped, and that was at Learn at Home Oregon. So does that mean that Carol is not secretary?
So I'm gonna have
Yeah,
we take that one off of this session because
yeah.
I don't know.
Can
It's
you see me
discussing
tomorrow?
staff, but
And I can answer all that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I can answer all that. And there's more complexity to it, Tim.
That's what I was afraid of.
It's okay. It's okay. Come and let's have a discussion.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Okay, so I've kind of missed some of this with people talking in and out from back in the pub, in the crowd there. I can't hear people when they talk. So I was wondering if either Christine or Sean, since Sean says, okay, we're gonna table this, we kind of had a timeline that was being handed out of spring break, some things happening and stuff. Can you kind of give me an outline of what might be happening and what a timeline might be in the next week or so, or 2 or 3, just so that I know what direction we're going now?
It'll. Okay, if I answer.
Yep, go
that.
ahead.
It'll take probably about a week to meet with everybody on the HR reset. And that'll be a combination of Roxy Smallwood, myself, and Lorraine. Well, all three of us will have to schedule times to meet with them, and it's going to take at least a week. And before we have an answer in terms of what is the overall financial, either savings or additional cost on the HR reset. In the meantime, I'm going to try and be scheduling some listening sessions with the staff after I meet with them K through 12 tomorrow after school. And that's also going to take a week or two. So when I say table, I think the board is wanting to see that data before we move forward with this proposal. Is that what I'm hearing? So
Mhm.
it'll take, I'm hoping less than 2 weeks, but I know it's going to take at least a week to get this work done. Is that helping answer your question?
Yes. I think we have a scheduled meeting for the 23rd.
That's spring break and we aren't having every other week meetings right now, Linda. So that should be removed from the calendar.
Okay. All right, well, I just wondered, when I could expect to hear some serious talk from Christine on some of this stuff again, so that we can still keep moving and still keep talking about it. I just wondered what the schedule was, so.
So I have a clarifying question too, after I kill the stink bug.
Good
Sorry.
shot.
So you're going to work on putting all of the employees in their positions
Yep.
in their schedule.
Yep.
So then once you do that, and you guys evaluate the data,
Mhm.
are you going to send out the email to the board so we know that
Mhm.
ahead of time? And then we'll
Yeah.
discuss it next board meeting, not Thursday, but in April? Is
Possibly,
that the
or
plan?
depends on how this transpires. We may even call another work session. You know, I'll have to talk to Christine about that, and where we get to and what things look like. I can update you guys versus an email, but it might be good for us to come back together. And
I feel like people are really hungry for a lot of details.
Mhm.
And I really want to know the operational details of this.
Mhm.
And then maybe a work session is the best place to get
Yeah.
that sort of. thing.
Yeah. By then, we could have some key conversations with staff, and I can outline a lot more of those details for you.
Yeah, because I'm just not comfortable with moving forward with the RIF process without the information.
Well, and thank you for bringing that up, Deb, because I'm just wasn't very comfortable with not having some point where we would touching base and learning some of the answers to some of this conversation so that we can just we don't have this space where people don't know.
Well, and so then I guess it goes to, nobody's getting ripped until after we get through the process.
That's what I'm hearing, yes.
So,
Go ahead, Tim.
All right, so a couple of things. This is not a easy position to be in at all. It's not an easy position for you as board members. It's not easy positions for us as admin. And it's certainly not an easy position for our staffs. And we need to be very transparent, and I'm going to be pretty blunt right now. We are talking about how big of a cut we need to make, which at this point, we've talked about, stage 0 has been about 2 million, and now we're looking at a couple 100,000, but we need to get up to 3 million. All this, and I think Sean did a very good job explaining that the cuts that are going to be made are going to have to be a lot of staff. And when we start talking about $1 million and how many staff members does that take to get to $1 million, we're going to come up really quickly to know that we have many, many staff that are going to be impacted by this.
mhm.
The longer we take, while it is being worked out, I understand we don't want to make a rush decision, but every month that we wait, our staff, many of them are going to have to find new jobs. We need to be very, I'd say, proactive and responsible to allow them opportunities to know where their fate lies for the Alsea School District, and allow them to start their new course in whatever districts they go to. And so while it's not comfortable, it's not easy, I think there's a lot of urgency because a lot of hiring for staff starts back up here in this next month. And I think we really need to allow staff the opportunity to gain employment if their employment at Alsea School Districts is going to be over. So.
Thank you, Tim.
So Tim, I think you make 2 super awesome points there. One, we need more transparency in all of this. I think part of it is even like you're sitting at a board, getting phone calls from community members and staff, not complaints, but questions and great topics to think of. I'm stumbling over the answers because I don't have them. So those are things that as a board, where I don't necessarily need to know the name of the human being, because that's not necessarily my position back here. The why behind it and how things are going to run is really important to get that information as soon as possible. So I appreciate that. I forgot the other really great thing you said. Dang it. Sorry. But thank you. I'll probably remember it later on.
Yes. Sue?
Well, I'm actually gonna get back to our actual rules of work session, but I would say that we do have a board meeting on Thursday night, and we have patron comments. We can add another section of patron comments, even if we need to, hear things before our discussion as well. You know, that's something that the board can do. But,
Or email us.
If that's what you said, you've had cuts before. I've been here for 50 years. I've never seen anything like this. Also
Yep.
been consulted.
so we'll go ahead and I would love to hear your feedback. Yes.
Yes, email us,
Um,
please.
All right. Anything else from anybody?
Lower your projections. That seems to be the key thread through all this, the projection.
Yeah.
Keep it in mind, you might be slowing them down.
All right. Well, with that, we will adjourn at 21:10. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll see you on Thursday.
And please feel free to reach out to us with any conversations, not complaints, but conversations. I would love to have some. This is sucky rookie.
To talk to you, but since I have you all here at the same time, I really am interested in knowing what happened when I was hired in October, when the hiring freeze began. Because I'm significantly overwhelmed with the fact that 5 months after. Sometime in the beginning of September, and I heard tonight. What happened between Laura?
I can share that with you.
And I'm also relatively sure that the ad that I answered to was for a secretary. I don't think that it was for an IA.
No, you are a secretary.
Then why is this